This podcast is rated R for restricted. Under 17 requires accompanying parent or adult guardian. Mission to 15.
All right, we're watching The 800. It's the Chinese movie. It made the most money at any movie last year. The synopsis is, from the acclaimed director behind Mr. Six comes a riveting war epic. In 1937, 800 Chinese soldiers fight under siege from a warehouse in the middle of the Shanghai battlefield, completely surrounded by the Japanese army. This was a mistake.
Riveting? Riveting?
Riveting. TC, it's your turn. It's TC and John's here. I apologize if anyone likes this movie, but I don't know. John might be different. I already talked to TC before the podcast. This is a mistake. It is my fault I picked it. TC, it's your turn to go first. What'd you think of it?
It was an absolute terrible movie. The biggest gripe I have with it is the off-screen dialogue.
Oh, I was going to say dubbing, but that's kind of the same thing. Oh, but that too.
But like the off-screen, just like there's like somebody in the background talking, but nobody ever sees him.
Oh, is that a horse?
Yes. And then there's a horse.
What's he doing? He's crazy.
The color scheme makes it look like it's fantastical,
but it's
green. And then there's like one scene where they like are shooting from above, and there's supposed to be like a flag going across the bridge, and it's just a square image of a flag that's going across a bridge. It's probably one of the worst movies I've seen in a long time. Nothing happens.
I agree with TC.
Nothing happens. Nothing happens except shot after shot of people getting shot.
I mean, yeah, lots of people get shot.
Do you know anything about them, John? Anything at all? Do you know anything about them? No, the answer is no.
No. I know that one guy falls into a sewage thing and then almost escapes, but the people won't let him come over. And then there's another guy who, barely talks and somehow his finger gets blown off. Then there's another guy, you know what I mean? But that's about the extent of what I know about these characters, is what happened to them in the movie.
Yeah.
Not like who they are, what their story is, why they're being followed, where do we go with it? I mean, there's
so many people in this movie. I had a hard time telling who is who. I only knew the guy with the head bandage on. All right, I got head bandage guy.
Why do we know any of them? I don't get it. The movie is basically just people getting shot and then screaming. People screaming, people getting shot, more people screaming, other people getting shot, run around a warehouse. Just then they go into like a little, I don't know, canal. Then they come back out, and then for some reason, there's like a group of people that are just chilling across the way. Like there's war going on one side of the canal, and on the other side of the canal, they're just like having a hunky-dory old time.
It might have helped me a great deal that I read some of the history of this first.
So this kind of happened, John, but the movie it represents it terribly. Yeah. It is so unrealistic in this movie.
Did that really happen? Where these people were just chilling across the way, like no big deal, watching?
But I don't think it was like this, where everyone's dressed up and it was all nice
like
and everyone's videotaping it.
It seems like they're like 50 feet away.
Yes, it does.
Right.
That's why the movie's bad. It's way too close.
It's way too close. There's no way they were that close in real life.
They couldn't have been. Bullets go further than that. Yeah.
They would have been dead. I don't know, man. This movie was terrible. I was like halfway through it, and I had to do it 2 nights.
I did it 3 nights. I'm just going to combine my review with yours, DC, because I don't want to talk too much about it.
I don't know. I don't know if any of it is, I'm glad John has some historical facts here, because I didn't want to even look it up because I was so bad. I didn't think it could be real. I just assumed they made all of it up.
And also, there's no there's no great heroic thing here. I don't even know. This is supposed to be the last stand of when Shanghai gets overrun.
Across.
And it ends when everyone's getting shot up on the bridge. It just ends.
Yeah.
After 2.5 hours. I'm like, what the fuck was that? Are you serious? So these guys were at war. They ran into a building. They sat there for 3 days, and then they ran out of the building. And that's the entire movie. That's it. And it's 2.5 hours long, and the dubbing is the worst. The music is nonstop, dramatic, shitty music. It's all green. They built a huge set with tens of buildings, but everything looks CG'd in the entire movie.
It does. It really does.
Yeah, it looks really bad.
It's bad. Yeah.
There's a horse. What's the horse supposed to be? I was so mad whenever the horse came back. I was like, there's a fucking white horse.
What was the reasoning of the horse?
I never figured that out. Horse is not going to be in the middle of a battlefield just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
Just running around.
Going, hey, what's
no
up?
big deal.
Hey,
galloping here, galloping there.
I don't know. What are those gunshots? I don't care. I'm a horse.
It's okay. I'm white. Look at how white I am. I'm a white horse.
It cut to the title at the end, and I was like, "Oh, great, this movie's over." And then it like slowly fades back in and does a little pan, and then the horse
how
pops out.
long
Like,
was
what
that
the fuck?
opening sequence?
It's the horse again.
Yeah.
How long was that opening sequence?
20 minutes.
I couldn't
20
believe it
minutes.
when the fucking title came on. I was like, that was the opening sequence.
Dude, I have notes. It's like
Holy
15
shit.
minutes in, we're still getting credits here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like when I looked it up and it was like not made in Hollywood, I was just like, you think? I can't imagine that. No chance. I can't imagine why this made $400 million.
COVID. 100% COVID. It was one of the few movies that was out during COVID. That's it. That's the only reason.
Wow. God, it's a bad movie.
Yeah.
If you're at home and you're listening to this, no matter what John says, skip it.
Yes.
I mean, that's all I have. There's nothing important to this movie to discuss. So if someone else wants to go, that's fine by me.
All right, I'm going to go real quick, John. The one thing I did while
ahead.
watching this movie was write down the dubs that made me laugh really hard because I was laughing throughout this movie because of how bad the dubs were. Not just the dialogue, but the way it was acted and the way it was mixed in. This movie made $500 million, and it blew my fucking mind that they couldn't spend any money on doing any of the localization sound.
I ended up not doing the dub. I saw the subtitled version. I was able to switch on
How?
those.
I bought it, and it didn't let me do a
Really?
Yeah.
I did.
It allowed me. It allowed me on Amazon.
Yeah. You
Once.
just maybe the interface wasn't working for you, but I was able to make it work.
When did you guys
Yeah.
watch this? I watched this like 3
I
weeks
watched
ago.
the dub because I turned on the other one. It was just as bad, and I had to read.
Oh.
And I was like,
No,
fuck
yeah,
this.
I think the subtitles made that much better. I
Okay,
think it
the
was
dub
far less
is the
problematic.
worst dub I've ever heard in
Oh,
my entire
all
life.
the dialogue happens off screen.
Yeah.
It's never the actors that speak, though. It doesn't matter if the dub is
that
there
would
or
have been
not.
rough. Yeah,
No,
I was going to say, because I didn't notice that at all from the subtitled version.
Oh, I don't know. I swapped it and noticed it there, too, because they don't
Oh,
actually
really?
speak, and you hear people in the background being like, do this, do that, and they're speaking in Mandarin. So it's the same thing. It's just not in Mandarin, but it's in English. The problem is, Denny, though, is it sounds like a white guy.
It
You know
sounds
what I
like a
mean?
white guy who
Like,
can't
yeah.
act.
Yeah. So it's like a really
No, so-
obvious
so
white
here's-
guy doing the dub. Yeah.
They say, watch out for the landmines 5 times. They
Yeah,
say,
they
don't
do.
just run around, followed by, stop running around. That's good
Yep.
dialogue.
Yep.
And then when the horse pops out, he's about to trample people, and he goes, watch out, he's fast. And then another thing with the horse, pull him back in here. Clean up the battlefield. What's wrong with him? He must be crazy. Give me some of yours.
Dude,
Look,
they were
there's a
screaming that
horse.
in Mandarin too, though. They were screaming that in Mandarin too, because I swapped and read the CCs a couple times. So
You'll attract the bullets over here. Pull the trigger. He killed your uncle. The Japanese are in the warehouse. I'm scared, you pussy. It's forbidden to leave the warehouse. Hey, man, you take my picture? You little sissy, what are you crying about? Tell me your real name, brother. Looks like something bad is about to happen. Where other
It's
nations
just
bully
bad.
us. The feeling goes right down to your groin. Hey, pussy, cigarettes in your life. Charge across the bridge now. Terrible.
Oh, it's so
Every one of those
bad.
made me laugh and cringe at the same time.
Meanwhile, they were looking out and they were seeing like thousands and thousands of Japanese. You're telling me they couldn't breach that stupid fucking warehouse? You're out of your mind. There's no way it was like that in real life.
Agreed. I read it too, John, and you're going to say, well, this did actually happen, but like the way, a movie is supposed
way
to
they
convince you that it
depicted
could happen, and it wasn't convincing at all.
Yeah.
They're just like, is anybody out here? And then they all go and stand outside for no fucking reason, and then the Japanese have the flares, and they're like, oh shit, we're all about to get shot. How do you know that? Why would they shoot the flares? None of it makes any freaking sense.
Yeah.
Where are they hiding? There's a fucking river right there. Like, I don't know. Movie's dumb. Sorry, John.
That's bad. Yeah. Go, all right, John, what do you got?
John, what do
No,
you think?
I saw the movie now like almost 3-4 weeks ago now because we were on hiatus for a bit in
Yeah.
terms of our recording schedule. And I read most of this quite a while ago. So this is probably going to be even more disorganized and vague than it usually
Great.
is. Um,
It'll affect the amount of effort they put into making this movie. That's good.
well, I don't know. I was watching. I remember not minding some of the shots, some of the sort of long shots that they did with large sequences of events. I thought those weren't too bad. Even though it looked fantastic, I just like the idea and the scene of the sort of like almost Vegas like strip on one side and on the other side this sort of war torn area. I thought just the idea of that was pretty cool, even though it didn't seem very realistic at all. It seemed almost like it's something you'd see in like a dystopian sci-fi movie about like this other side of the tracks kind of thing. Certainly to some extent, it was that. You had these international zones in Shanghai, and the people were basically observing the war. More or less across the river. So it had some of that components to it. I don't think it was as like squished together as it seemed.
And when they observe, they're safe there. They're not like everyone's dressed up in fancy ass clothing going out drinking and gambling
they were relatively
I don't
safe
understand.
there. They were. There
they
was
were
an
bombing
it was
everything
like,
across the river.
Not everything. I mean, again, the Japanese were actually like bombing not too good, or actually it was the Chinese, I think, when they were doing bombing runs and they were trying to, the Chinese Air Force wasn't very well trained and they would end up bombing a bit indiscriminate, not on purpose, but they'd be trying to get like the Japanese ships there in the harbor and whatnot, and they would end up bombing places all around the city because they weren't too good at what they were doing. They weren't very well trained. I mean, and so they're
all the more reason to hide inside.
Like,
you're not proving your point here. I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying they're totally
These
safe,
people
but
were partying. It was like it wasn't even happening in the movie.
It was the case that you had people that were not involved in the war, and there were a bunch of different nationalities. And again, lots of people were constantly fleeing Shanghai at the time. But you did have these international zones where there were people that were sort of looking over to the war zone. And again, I don't think it was all as clean cut as that. And I don't know if they were just, I mean, I've got maybe some quotes later on that describe what that was like a little bit. But certainly there were British observers and other international observers in those international zones that were watching what was going on.
You're telling me when people are shooting bullets, there's a blimp just floating over the fucking city? And the whole time I was sitting there, I'm like, you're telling me nobody's shooting at that blimp by accident?
I have no idea about the
Not
blimp,
one
buddy.
person's popping a fucking hole in that blimp.
Not one bullet.
Not one bullet.
And
And they were flying so low. Some of those shots they had, they were like 100 feet up, looking down on the Chinese, like, oh, look at these guys.
I have no idea about the blimp, but neither the Japanese nor the Chinese wanted to do get, say, Britain mad at them or any of the international community. That was not going to be a good idea for either of these countries. So they did not want to piss off these other
You know what
powers.
would have been cool in this movie if they did that. If that was shown, that'd be cool.
If they
actually had
like
like
blimp?
if they had not the blimp thing, but just like show. So I read up on this too, John. It would have been cool if they actually showed like there was two sides of the river. Like this fucking happened, but this movie's terrible. If they actually somehow showed that there was two sides of the river and one side felt safe and there was like they were protected because other nations were occupied in there and one side was completely Chinese, and they showed like something realistic or something that showed tension there or something.
It just seems so.
You mean that conversation between the two white guys and the Asian dude wasn't enough? Come on. You should have got that. I mean, I wondered why that wasn't even in there, but that's what they were probably trying to do, right? Is be like, look, there's Americans and British there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just hanging out making bets. See who's going to die first. Like, this fucking movie. God. The Room and this movie are up for the fucking...
This is worse than Room.
This is worse than Room, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was, I think, again, having read about it, this at least is some history. And
yeah, but you like the history. You don't like the movie, right?
No, I know. But
and you also
again,
did the thing. What was the other movie where you read about it before you watched it and that reading about it influenced your knowledge?
Yeah, it helps an awful lot.
Yeah.
I forget what other movie it was.
Too.
Oh, maybe it was Citizen Kane.
Oh, it'll do it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that sounds right.
Because I enjoyed it. I'd like done half of my reading before watching.
Where you learned why it was good before you watched it.
Yeah, and I appreciated that.
Yeah.
It helped me.
Yeah. I could see that helping because certainly wouldn't hurt. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't really have much to say. I definitely think if you are going to watch this, subtitles the way to go. It sounds like.
It sounds like Have we been more clear on any other podcast, John? What we mean from what we say?
Yes.
No,
movie
this is the most clear we've ever been.
He's summing up here. So it's you guys didn't like it.
Movie's terrible.
I didn't hate it so much. I don't know why I'm not like. I mean,
I've never split a movie up into 3 nights. 3 nights I had to split this
I'm
up.
annoyed by the how this clearly is a propaganda movie. But
is
but
it?
It's
what
not,
is it saying?
Well, what's the if it wasn't, I completely
I
missed
didn't get any message out of this whatsoever.
Really? Well, that's probably for the best. I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Any
is
more
it that
than
they're
like
heroes?
Yes. Well, it's about there's the line there about how this is like a symbol of how China needs to stand up for itself and not be dependent on the international community and show the world and ourselves that we can stand up to anybody. There's kind of their little speech there, sort of about why they're instructed to stay into the warehouse and what it means. Which really, again, with what little reading I did, it's just it really was. It wasn't about proving anything to the Chinese people. It was all about trying to get the international community's sympathies, because it was critically important at the time. I mean, if China could get Russia on its side against Japan, or any Great Britain, or any of those, keeping those countries more on China's side, and making it clear that the Chinese could be seen as like valiantly fighting back against the aggressor, the occupiers, which were the Japanese, that's critical for them and very important. And in the minds of their military leaders, it was worth trying to make some kind of stand in Shanghai, even though they knew the city was lost. And so that's why they had this group of people where there were actually 400 of them. There weren't 800. There's just this line. The one general told them to say there's 800 people, but there never were 800 people.
No, it was 500 something, I think.
Yeah, or over 400. And only 50 of them. Only 50 of them ended up dying, in all told. So to start with, it wasn't the 800, and it wasn't about a symbol for China. It really was meant to be a symbol for the international community. So some people criticize it. They were using the military as a propaganda tool, but so what? It's war. You do whatever you can to try to get an edge for your country, and if part of that is like making a show for the international community, then okay. I don't know if that's better than like throwing your troops at other troops when you know they're going to lose anyway. So anyway, it just seems to like try to spin it in this real nationalistic thing. But again, in any Independence Day type movie or like The Patriot or whatever, you can see that sort of happening with American movies.
You're talking about the Alien movie, Independence Day?
Yeah. No,
that didn't happen.
Talking about Men in Black.
John, you know that didn't happen, right?
Independence Day turned out to be quite the American movie though too, where it was like the Americans that stood up, Anyway.
See, I didn't get any of that, John. I didn't get one bit of that.
Nope.
Really?
And maybe
Wow.
that's just because I wasn't paying attention anymore.
That's because you read a book and you were putting the book in the movie where it didn't exist, is what you did.
Probably. It helped me.
Yeah, it helped
swear.
you, yeah, but that doesn't make sense.
And I'm sure like everybody, not everybody, but I'm sure people in China, a lot of them know this history, right? Because this is their
this
history.
is like a
They may not. You never know.
It's
I don't know a lot of our history.
I've never heard this story in my life.
Yeah.
Well, you're not from China.
Well, also, this is
but-
a small story. There are a lot of stories in our history that we probably don't know about in terms of war because we're not history buffs. Like, where does this?
Yes, but everybody
true.
knows. Like, it could be like everybody knows the the ride of Paul Revere or whatever. I mean, we have certain like legends.
We like the fun ones. That one
stories.
doesn't matter at all. But that has a horse and a guy yelling at night. That's pretty fun.
Right, the British
Memorable.
right, whatever, and there were poems about it or whatever. So it certainly has more to that. Anyway, as far as the movie goes, that's all. I didn't hate it nearly as much, but
you did hate it.
But you didn't like it.
No, you said you didn't hate it as much, which means you
You didn't
hated
hate
it
it
worse.
as
but not
much.
as much.
Which
We
means
watched
you did
much
hate it.
worse.
Yeah, right.
I thought. I mean, it's interesting to see
good.
like to see this kind of. To see this Chinese war movie, this sort of like, and so part of the history of this film is like there were 12 minutes cut out of it. I think it was 12 minutes.
Why did they do like 34, 40 minutes?
So
An hour and a half would have sufficed.
no, but it would be really interesting to know. So the state, everything's run by the government there, basically,
Right.
as far as the censorship or whatever, and they control the media.
Uh-huh.
So they control the internet, they control what's released. Well, this film premiered, but then it got pulled, and 12 minutes had to be edited out, assuming that because that 12 minutes was not favorable to the Chinese government in some way, shape, or form.
Gotta
and
love
so
it.
It'd be really interesting to see what those
12 minutes were.
I think it was 12 minutes or some small amount
Damn,
of time.
if only
that had
they
to be
took
cut
out more. That would have been
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Do us a solid,
Anyway.
China. Come on.
All right. That's all I got for the movie, though. I don't.
Anybody
I
else
don't
wonder
know.
where
I don't
the
know.
sniper
I'm
was?
just sort of
'Cause
confused.
I didn't know where the
It'd
sniper
just be
was.
that I'm not as negative. I mean, not that I would recommend this to anybody, but yeah, I'm not as negative on it.
Do you guys
this
know
movie's
where
so
the
bad. I
sniper
don't feel
was?
bad
though?
talking shit on it.
Does anybody know where the sniper was at the end? Because it seemed like he had a really good spot.
The bridge sniper? No. Yeah, they didn't really show it.
I don't
They
know.
never
I had no
showed.
idea what was going on at the
Yeah.
end there. People in like their freaking bathrobes and start shooting out of the bridge. I don't know if they were Japanese or Chinese. Like
What they were doing,
whose side was he
yeah.
on? Who's
I
he
don't know.
firing at? What the hell is going on here? And then
I
they're
don't
just
know.
the ending of this movie is just people running over the bridge, going to
And
a
getting
fence.
shot.
There's no way to get over the bridge because there's a fence there, so they can't make it over the bridge. And then
Right.
all the people on the international side reach their hands through the fence to be like, "You did it" or something. What is that?
Yeah,
supposed
what
to
was
mean?
that
Yeah, I
little
don't know.
end
I mean, they
piece there?
really started made it look like
We're on your
like
side
it was a
now.
massacre. Yeah, and none
Yeah.
of them survived. When again, like the vast majority of them did get out, and they did escape across the bridge that way. That's how it actually happened, supposedly.
That's a really good idea,
Um,
by the way. Do little groups so that they have time to reload between shots, so everybody can die. Running across the bridge. That makes a lot of sense. Go in groups
Yeah,
of 20.
That's right.
That's what I would think.
That's more dramatic. That you can really stretch out that dramatic moment
Yeah.
that way.
You got to
If
make sure that last shoot scene is
just
45
one
minutes
big
long.
mob, and they're all like dying. That's a lot harder to sort of like keep that sort of personal.
I mean, there
drama
was a
going.
canal. They could have split up. There's only one sniper.
Swim across the freaking canal.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a movie. It was terrible. I don't know. There's no other way to put it, John.
Yeah,
I don't care what the history was. The movie was awful.
But the
Don't
suicide
bother seeing
the
it.
suicide bombings didn't happen, as far as I could tell.
Them just jumping off into the thing, blowing people up. That didn't happen? No. Wouldn't have guessed.
So
That was the most ridiculous part. They're just fucking running out with dynamite on them. Boom.
I mean that
One after another.
Again, there was on
Fuck
both
you.
sides there in the conflict. There was a lot of that kind of sacrifice of the soldiers. It just as far as
It wasn't
from what
dudes
I
jumping out of a
read,
window tied with fucking dynamite.
well, no, but they would just go and like basically a single soldier would. There were cases where like a single soldier would go and just sacrifice themselves in front of a bunch of tanks or something because. It was something they did that they could save the rest of the rest of the soldiers there, or the rest of their group.
Yeah, that
So-
makes sense though, John, doesn't it? When there's tanks, you get to save your other people as opposed to holding up in a warehouse. What do you get from jumping out and killing yourself?
Yeah,
You're trying to defend a warehouse.
Supposedly,
Well, the
again, the
people
way
were
the
under
movie
them,
set it up is
supposedly,
they
right?
said they like stopped some of the
Japanese
sort of
from
like
coming in.
turtle approach that the Japanese soldiers were taking there. That
Yeah.
they sort of like were able to to counteract that with suicide bombing. So that was the point there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
See,
Uh-huh.
They were
Why was
starting
the
to-
trolley
yeah.
still running? Did you guys just see the trolley? It just kept running throughout
Did
the
you
movie.
guys see the blimp? What the
Yeah,
fuck
what's
was
up with the blimp? I still want to know about the blimp. Why was the blimp there? And if they had to choose something, did they really choose a blimp?
Do you
I
think
mean,
the ticket
honestly.
sales went down because of the fear of falling, or they went up because there was a lot to watch from up there?
No, I thought the blimp was purely like British military. Or
It was, but I mean, come on, the thing's barely floating.
Yeah.
Shit. One wrong move, that whole thing goes down. Then what?
Yeah. Probably filled
Then
with
what?
hydrogen too, right?
And then what? Hey, then you got people jumping out of the blimp with dynamite on. The fuck?
All right, before we go over the blimp, guys, you got your dynamite strapped on just in
you got your
case?
straps. Yeah. Don't
Yeah,
forget your dynamite
right.
straps. We might need to blow. Yeah, fuck this. The movie was terrible.
Another thing that's really confusing as I was going through trivia on the Wikipedia page, it says the production team. So this is a huge budget movie. It was the first Chinese production to film on all IMAX cameras, which costs a lot of money. They built 68 buildings in a 1.5 million square foot area in
Wow.
China, but everything looks CG.
It does. It
Everything
looked like
looks
crap.
CG,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's so.
And it did not look like the 30s.
It's got to be so
either.
sad for the
It
people who
just
built
too-
it. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
they like it. I don't. I was so confused at that fact. I thought they just, especially like, if they built the warehouse, which they apparently did, that last shot where it pans around, I swear to God, that was all CG. It looked like CG.
It looked like a lot of set extension.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean,
That's
it just
confusing.
wasn't. It was
Yeah.
so. I guess maybe the quality was so high that it was hard to make it look old and shitty, right?
Yeah, maybe this looks better or worse than IMAX. I don't know. Maybe you guys got to. That's what we got to go do now. We all gotta
No,
go see
no,
this
no,
in
no, no,
IMAX.
no, 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 no.
I also, TC, I don't know if you can detect this, but I was looking at, there's a lot of like ash or snow or something in this movie. Like every shot has little like out of focus dust
Particles?
motes or whatever. Like every single shot in this movie. I don't think they would have done that in every shot. I think that's probably some kind of digital filter.
Digital filter. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
they just
doubt
put it on
Yeah.
every shot. Just they
Yeah.
bought like a
Just
Adobe
blanket it.
Premiere filter,
Yeah.
put it on every single shot in the entire
Yeah.
movie.
Well, maybe they
I
ended
mean-
up doing that, and so maybe things look CG because they're putting a lot of like effects on
Bullshit
top of it.
on it.
Well, it's
so
all
that it-
filtered green 100% of
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, the color
Yeah.
profile was weird.
yeah.
It was cement. It was supposed to be so that it was like old looking, but it didn't work. It
Yeah.
just looked
processed. It looks overly processed.
Yeah, right.
Digitally.
Well, like I
overly
said,
processed.
not from Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right? Trying their best. Not quite.
But $80 million this movie was, so that's pretty huge.
It made 400 something. I mean, it
450.
obviously is successful. More successful than any movie I'll ever fucking make. Right?
Yeah.
So what the hell do I know?
So this movie actually, so back when I read, when I found out about this and wanted to watch it back in earlier this year, it must have been before May of 2021. This is no longer the highest grossing movie that came out in 2020. That is now due to reopening since the pandemic is still going on. There's a movie called Demon Slayer Munjin Train, which
that
is
is
the number
also
one.
awful.
You
It's
saw
also
it?
bad.
You saw it?
I was sick and I was like, I want to see what the highest grossing movie was now. And it was the only way I could do it was rent it. And so I rented it.
And it was
I
like, what?
Actually, I think I was like sick and drugged up on NyQuil. So I was making bad
And even then it wasn't good?
decisions.
You were all high and shit?
Yeah, it's still bad. I like anime. And even it was, I didn't like it. I didn't finish watching it. Let's not watch that one.
Okay. I was gonna recommend
Let's
it
not.
because it's
Yeah,
the
that's
highest
absolutely
grossing.
not.
It's not good. It's not good. And I like that sort of thing.
I still think this should hold the title because as of, December 31st, 2020, this was the highest grossing. The only reason that one's now the highest is because it's still playing in theaters because we're still
I
in
see.
the pandemic.
Okay. So yeah, that shouldn't count. Yeah.
But it does according
it's
to
okay.
Wikipedia, but not
But
according to
I don't know if
Box
you go
Office
down that
Mojo.
list, it wasn't like, I don't know, it was like Bad
The
Boys
800,
3
Demon
or something.
Slayer Munjin Train, Bad Boys for Life is number 3, My People, My
Yeah,
Homeland
yeah.
number 4, Tenet number 5. We can watch that one, guys.
Yay.
Number 6, Sonic the Hedgehog. That movie was pretty fun.
That was
That
was
I
the
could
best
see
movie
being
of
all right.
the
I
lot.
love Sonic growing up.
Yeah, have you seen that one, TC? It's
It
pretty
is
good.
a fun movie.
Is
It's pretty
it?
good,
I
yeah.
love Sonic.
It's stupid, but it's fun. It's real
Yeah,
fun.
it's like a really easy watch.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think it's on like HBO now, Max or something now too. I don't know.
Okay.
It's on one of those or Hulu. It's on one of those.
That's something I could get behind. Not the 800 though.
We're not gonna review it, but it's. I mean, it's fun. The kids liked it too.
Nice. The IMDb page doesn't even list who did the voice acting for the American dub
Because they're so embarrassed.
because they're either embarrassed or they're nobodies.
Yeah.
They just called their
Do
friends.
not put my name out
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Nobody even knows who it was.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, like you said, Denny, they
They
just
paid
called
him
their
in
friends
cash and they burned all records of any phone calls to these people.
Yeah. Right.
So that's it.
Paid in
Yay.
Bitcoin.
Yay. It's going to be an easy
Yeah.
one to edit, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want me to tell you? I can go through my book notes if you want. Or do you want to even not hear
More
about
than
this?
anything, I want that.
I don't. Do you want to just stop talking about this? Okay.
No, do you have anything good?
Let me try to
don't,
do
you have
it
don't
anything
fast.
read
good?
from the book, but do you have any cool information that you would like
Well,
to share?
there's some. Like, so this is the book that I read was
Johnny's
it's
Book
called
Corner.
Hey,
Yeah.
it's Johnny
Hey.
Book Corner.
Yeah.
Johnny.
John was with me on the East Coast these past 2 weeks, so he hasn't had time to create the bumper there for you, John. But it's coming.
John.
It's coming.
Okay. I eagerly await that. So Shanghai 1937, Stalingrad on the Yangtze. That's the name of the book by Peter Harmsen. So it's pretty nice to just sort of a overall account of the war or the sort of war that was going on at that time between China and Japan. Shanghai was the Asia's largest city after Tokyo. It was the 5th largest in the world at the time. And the Japanese were the occupiers. So you can think about it like the Japanese were far fewer in number, but they were much better trained and had much better equipment. And Japan was more of an organized force in the world than China was. China was very often just like a bunch of like, they had some dynasties. The most recent dynasty has sort of fallen, meaning like an overall rule that helped sort of like stabilize the whole country. And it was just sort of, it was just breaking down into just various warlords and factions and so forth that were fighting. And so
Why was Japan occupying China at this time?
So
I know
it's
nothing about World War II.
more land.
Yeah, me either.
Also, they wanted to protect themselves from Russia. It just seemed like, again, I don't know the exact reason. It just seemed like that's like always more land to have more resources. Japan is pretty small, relatively speaking. So you'd think like they'd want to be expansionist, just like any other sort of imperial kind of power at the time. So that was kind of the thing you did. If you were Britain, you went and go and tromp all over Africa and so forth and various other countries. That was what a lot of these powers were doing at the time. So
It was
I
the
don't know,
thing. It was the hot new thing.
Thing to do, but you
Got
also
it.
you expand, and then that usually ended up the whole empire idea sort of seemed to kind of fizzle out.
You teach cricket to the natives, so they're not so mad at you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Sure, exactly, right? I mean, and it is. You can kind of think of like the Japanese here as being the British in a lot of these other movies that we see. They really were. They were their occupiers. and they would come in and they would not be very nice. And in fact, the Japanese soldiers, there's story after story of terrible atrocities that the Japanese soldiers did. If you ever heard about the rape of Nanking, where basically they described the rape of an entire city because what the Japanese soldiers did was so awful that it's appropriate to make that statement. It was awful. I mean, there's one story in the book about how there's this anecdote of these Japanese soldiers posing with a woman they raped and getting somebody to take their picture. And the Japanese soldiers, when they would go back home, they would really be lauded, like everybody would be bowing to them. They were really hugely respected, but they did pretty awful things to other soldiers and civilians alike when they were in China as part of this. So it's pretty, especially you can see from the Chinese perspective that in this context during this time, the Japanese were the bad guys. They were evil and they were occupiers of their country. So you can kind of see that setup. And it's not to say it was all one way. The Chinese soldiers did some pretty terrible stuff too. And there's one story about, I might be able to get to it. It's just that the Japanese had occupied the city and they pulled the soldiers out. And then the Chinese people in that city just went and just massacred any Japanese official that was there, be they man, woman, or child, because the military force was pulled out. Basically, like you can think about it, if you have this occupying force that is hostile to you and they leave, then you're going to be pretty hostile right back and do probably horrible, terrible things to their people as well. So it was pretty nasty. And it was tough again for the Chinese. They had very little military training. They had German advisors that wanted to help them out. And these aren't Nazi Germany. I mean, they may have turned into Nazis, but these are more post-World War I Germans, people that had advised the Kaiser and things like that were advising the Chinese. So they had some German advisors, again, not Nazis. I don't even know like what we call the Germans from World War I. If they certainly, I don't think they were deemed as fascists, even though they were the aggressor in World War I. I know very little about them. This is great, huh?
I like it.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just laughing because you're teaching us things and then you petered off with just demoralizing yourself over there. I just say, the World War. I don't know.
There's so much. I mean, I read one book, and I skimmed parts of it and tried to like focus on the parts around the movie. So by no means am I any kind of authority. I'm just trying to pick up something.
You're saying you're up in a blimp and you're looking down.
I'm in a blimp looking down.
And all right.
Yeah. So this guy named Chiang was a general that sort of did start to consolidate power in China. And he was really started to be able to amass forces and get coalitions together to where that he was starting to organize against the Japanese. And that's where this in the 30s, that's where he's starting to come to power. And he's starting to help organize sort of the response to Japan. But for a long time, what China would do is just sort of keep pulling back and let Japan have more territory in China because they just didn't have the power. They really couldn't like beat China back or Japan back. They just did not have the technology. So they were just fighting sort of a retreating action. All the while they were trying to organize and get trained and get up some kind of force so that they could actually respond and put up some kind of organized resistance to this. Because otherwise Japan was just going to keep infiltrating and keep claiming more and more territory. And in World War II breaking out, again, I don't know exactly how that all happened, but certainly it probably helped the situation where Japan ended up siding with Germany and then Russia ends up siding against Japan, thus helping the Chinese out there as well. Because Russia was, again, a huge power at the time. Now I've forgotten everything I've read up to this point. So.
Good stuff.
And I've gone blank. There's nothing else.
And there's nothing left.
Yeah. But again, they would do like, Japan would do these sneaky sort of things too, because they were still trying to be somewhat careful of the international community's sense of what was going on. So Japan wanted to portray China as this lawless barbarian land where if somebody didn't come in and sort of take charge and control things, it was just going to be chaos there anyway. And again, that's arguably, like what Britain's argument would be about like moving into Africa and taking charge over there and commanding the resources, right? But the Japanese would do things like, again, in 1931 to kind of kick off things. They blew up their own railroad so that they could blame the Chinese so that they could then start being more hostile, bring in more hostilities. So they were doing sneaky things like that to sort of like look good to the international community while they themselves were the ones that were provoking, even more of a military response on their side.
Jeez.
So I'm going to just skip on to probably where we get to the what happened with the. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting history about Chiang and how he comes to power and how they're constantly like fighting the Socialist Party there too, and how the whole idea of how like Chiang ends up consolidating power in China is interesting, and sort of a backstory to a lot of to our story in terms of like what happened in Shanghai. And I mean, again, the scary thing was like how China would have they would have airplanes and stuff that they would buy. Some of them American made, but they had pilots that barely knew how to fly. And then they would have like just maybe like some weeks of training, and then they would go on bombing runs and mostly kill themselves because or kill civilians and stuff. I mean, it just was, they were so poorly trained. And
just winging it, literally.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So like, we're going to go to Shanghai. We're going to try to bomb this naval vessel.
Yeah, just don't hit the blimp. That's all we ask. All right. One job: avoid the blimp.
And if you fuck up, we're going to have the blimp up there monitoring you.
That's right. Doing. Looking at you through telescope.
Because neither side wanted to anger the international community. That's sort of why you had these safe zones in Shanghai for the most part. It's like the Japanese didn't want to cause any civilian casualties there, and the Chinese didn't want to either. So while both of these sides were at war, more or less, and fighting over the territory there, neither of them wanted to anger the international community. Neither of them wanted to get like Russia or Britain upset. So you did create these relatively safe zones where the English people were staying and the people that weren't Chinese were staying. And they really were trying, on both sides were trying to not go there or cause any harm there, because both sides knew that the opinion of the international community was hugely important. And that, if somehow the international community would turn against Japan, then Japan would be in a more worrisome position as far as holding their ground in China.
Wow. Well, that's a ridiculous story. I didn't get any of that out of the movie.
Nope.
So, yeah. Glad, John. I could see why, John, that you said you got more out of it now that you read.
John wants to start a book podcast, I can tell.
Yeah.
Not really.
That's better than the movie.
I like doing this in a targeted way, though. It sort of helps when I can around a film.
Your little summary, my imagery in my head was better than the whole movie. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I believed it.
So,
sounded like it actually happens.
Exactly. That's right, Denny. It actually makes sense that maybe this was a thing, unlike from the movie.
You got character motivations. You got interesting plot developments.
Yeah.
You got
all
a
weird
stuff.
safe zone. Yeah. Jeez.
They had all these things to pick from to make the movie, and they did none of it. None of it.
Right. I don't know, John. That was good. That was good intel.
They were just talking.
He's got more. He's just reading. He's reading.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just like trying to remember my notes and what's worth talking about. Again, I thought this book was pretty well written and fairly well referenced. So if you are interested in this period, again, it's Shanghai 1937, Stalingrad on the Yangtze.
And just to be clear, me and TC have nothing against this point in history, if that's not completely obvious.
Oh, I know.
And I'm sure we'd be interested in learning more about. Yeah, it's the movie is terrible.
I'm not that interested. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Yeah, but I'm not that interested in learning. That's the issue.
Right.
In general.
But John, you'd recommend it?
Yeah.
If you're a history type of guy?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting to know about this sort of stuff. I mean, I had no idea. I had no knowledge of the interactions between Japan and China prior to World War II and what that was like. Some people think that it was sort of what started to really kick off the momentum towards World War II was this conflict and how Japan started to react and engage the international community and then start to work with and then how they ended up forming a relationship with the Germans and so forth. But So the idea was that they were going to fight. They needed to make a statement. They knew Shanghai was going to be lost to the Japanese, but they needed to make some kind of show to the international community to hold out. And there was going to be this conference in Brussels that was coming up, and so it was part of, and it's sort of alluded to in the film that they wanted to sort of make sure the international community knew that the Chinese were brave, that they were putting up a good fight, but also like it's also a bit of a display if they're there holding ground even against superior numbers and technology, and that can help like sort of sway the emotions of the international community. And again, that's what the whole point of that company staying there or that group staying there. So, the general is like quoted one of the, when they're talking about, they're saying that the whole point is that as a strategic objective, you want to direct attention towards Japan's aggressive behavior. And since Shanghai is an international city, it has its eyes and ears of the global community, you want to bring the realities of combat in Shanghai to the Brussels meeting. And so leaving troops in Zibai, that's the area where the warehouse was located, for the final battle would be tantamount to sacrificing them, whether it's a large force or a small one. But they just decided they were going to stay and fight. And so they just picked this unit to stay because it was a well-seasoned unit, although by the time that they were defending this area, they were pretty decimated. So they no longer had like seasoned troops for the most part. It was mostly like just new people that had come on recently. And there was argument about that too. But then they decided that they were going to, they had this small unit, and they did end up picking this warehouse to stay and defend until they were told they could leave. And that's it's called the Four Banks Warehouse because it used to be, there were like 4 banks that were made use of it. And they decided that's where they're going to make their stand. And so this actually did happen, that they chose this particular warehouse to make their stand in. And that was like slightly over 400 people. And that was, in China, they're called the Lost Battalion. And so again,
even though they didn't get lost, they mostly survived.
Right.
And there wasn't 800
Yes.
of them. There was 452.
No, 400 and so.
Yes.
But there's a quote from the general there when there's the girl that makes her way over. This actually happened, at least according to the book too, where the one girl sneaks her way over and talks to them. And he tells her sort of famously, she's saying, well, how many are there of you here? And he says, tell them there's 800. Wanting them to, believe that there's like a superior force there. So that's where that number 800 came from.
So the book was riveting.
Yeah.
They just messed up the review.
So anyway,
I can't tell. I can't tell what
notes.
John's emotions are. He's
Well,
really
I'm
trying to
just
ignore
trying to remember
TC.
what the hell I read. So the Japanese were pretty scared of aerial bombardment because there were already some mess ups there. So the proximity of the warehouse
Chinese are flying around like idiots, bombing everything.
right. But the Japanese are like, so it's part of the reason why the warehouse stood too. They didn't just go and bomb the shit out of it because it was so near the international settlement that they run a terrible risk of like bombing the wrong area or even shelling the wrong area. So it's part of why the warehouse stood as long as it could, or they were able to make the stand that they did, was because it was so close to the international areas.
Checks out.
Yeah.
It checks out. Yeah, it does.
Oh, so yeah, it was a party of medics that were there that were leaving with the injures that had snuck over the bridge. And Yang Raifu, and I don't know if he was the general or who he was, but he said, this is his quote, he says, if anybody asks how many soldiers are inside the 4 banks, say there are 800. Under no circumstance let anyone know how few we really are. That would embolden the Japanese. And that's how the whole 800 heroes legend was born.
I mean, I read that too. Don't you think telling them, hey, we held you off and there's very little of us would be even better? It's like there's
in
a
the
small
long
number
run,
and we're kicking your ass.
You can say that afterwards, but right there, you don't want to let them know, hey, there's only a small number of people in this warehouse.
Let's go get 'em. Yeah.
It's 3 hours. There's 2 of us here.
Exactly.
Don't worry. Yeah.
It's Larry and Timmy.
Yeah. We're gonna lace ourselves with dynamite, and we'll be all right. Yeah.
There was the Chinese flag. There was an episode where they did hoist the Chinese flag to the roof of the building. There was not like the brave defending of it and all of that, all that sequences that happened that was described. But it did happen that the flag was.
I thought it
put
happened
back up
exactly
there.
the way the movie showed it happening.
Yeah,
That's what I
know.
thought.
I'm sure it did.
Just bleeding out, holding this thing up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she brought the flag over. The girl that came over actually was the one to bring the flag over, snuck it over there. And then they stuck it up. They put it up there. The soldiers did. So that was kind of a big moment for them, was them putting the flag back up. And so again, and the book says this to finally read the book, that the Chinese Alamo-style battle in Zibai had been a resounding propaganda victory. And the Lost Battalion had captured the imagination of the world. And for a few days, journalists paid intense attention to its fate. So Zhang Boting, the 88th Division's chief of staff, had been sent to Shanghai's foreign districts to keep in touch with the general and his men. And he felt that after 4 days of fighting, the battalion had made its point, and the next step was to disengage from the enemy and withdraw. And so then they had this escape route, and they escaped over the bridge. So for 4 days, they held out, and it did really bring attention to this conflict, exactly the way that the Chinese government had hoped it would. So from that sense, too, it was a resounding success. That's all I got.
That's good. Thanks, John.
Good stuff.
Thanks for
Yeah,
reading,
Thanks
John.
for the info, John.
I'm glad you found some enjoyment out of other pieces of media related to this movie. That's always
Yeah,
nice.
because the movie was really bad. Just to reiterate for all the listeners.
I know, but it is interesting, and
Yeah,
having
it
some
is.
of the more of the history made it interesting to see some of this. But again,
No.
yeah.
No.
Well, we're about to watch next week another World War II movie
Where are we, really?
that's on the list. Yeah.
What is it?
So top 250 on the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
No.
No.
So yeah, next week we're gonna watch Grave of Fireflies, which is the
Grave
second
of
to last Studio Ghibli
Fireflies.
movie we're gonna watch on this list.
Right.
Okay.
Made in 1988. This is the only non-Miyazaki movie on the list that's from Studio
is
Ghibli.
Miyazaki not involved at all in this?
I don't see his name anywhere on the
Okay.
credits right here. It's Isao Takahata.
Wait a minute. We still have Spirit. We still have. It's the second to last, right?
Second
we
to
still have
last.
Spirited Away,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. But so yeah, this movie is the synopsis is a young boy and his little sister struggle to survive in Japan during World War II.
All right.
So
And
this movie
it's
is
apparently
62 when we
sad.
froze it, or 60 when we froze it. It is now number
Yeah.
42. So it's climbing
Oh,
the
wow.
ranks.
It's gone up.
Yeah. We should
Yeah.
do
It can't
an
be as
update
bad
on the
as this
list,
one.
John.
Yeah.
We see movement here. That's a pretty big
I'm wondering
jump.
if we should like wait until we're at the 50 mark, or if I should
Just have a
do one next week.
massive episode with the
Yeah, well,
our
because it won't,
rankings. And
not that much. Surprisingly, not a ton changes. So, but yeah,
I think once you're in the top 100, to jump a 20 is pretty significant.
no, that is
That is.
significant. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just saying in general, not a lot has changed. The last time I've rerun those, it hasn't been like big jumps.
I'm
but I
checking now.
should- I can do it.
Shawshank's still number 1. Good.
Of course.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah.
There's no sink in the Shawshank. Nobody knows why it's there, and nobody
knows why
has
it
any
doesn't
idea why it'll
move.
go away.
Yeah, right.
Everybody's mom logged on to IMDb after they watched it on TNT, the 6-hour length with all the commercials, and they loved it.
Right. And they just can't get enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman.
No, I'm like,
Has there been a better
I had
duo?
Morgan Freeman, and this is the best movie ever.
Yeah.
Huh.
So we're going to do that. We might actually
Also, TC, have you watched Ted Lasso?
I don't think so.
got to watch Ted Lasso.
You need to.
Yeah?
We rewatched the whole first season because the second season started last week.
If you want
Okay.
feel good
Um,
content that's quality too, it's the best
Yeah.
feel good quality
Okay.
content ever.
yeah, well said. It's really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't do any of this bullshit where you want this, but we're going to have tension, so we're not going to give it to you. No,
Right,
it's like, you want
exactly.
this? Here you go. You're going to get
Exactly.
it every second of the
And
TV
it's going to
show.
be good, and
All right.
it's still going to be a little bit of drama, but still, it's going to have this wholesomeness to it. That's just great. It's really good. TC, I
Okay.
think you'll love it.
You got to get Apple Plus though, right, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's on Apple Plus.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
That's the issue.
Yep.
Don't have
Mhm.
that. Yep.
No.
Get it for a month, binge it. Well, actually, so what we're doing, John, is since they're releasing it like one episode at a time, we're waiting for the entire second season to come out, and then
And
we're
we're
going to
gonna
rent
binge
it,
it.
and then we're just going to binge it. Yeah.
Well, I'll not tell
Yeah.
you, but so far
All right.
it's starting off well. It's keeping the same train running.
Nice.
But I was thinking too, like I know we sort of thought about doing a segment once in a while about what we're watching. I don't even think that is that useful, but I do think like I don't like it. But what I do like is if there is something we're really enjoying that we should like check in on that.
I think you
Like,
should
it-
leave on Netflix, season 1 and 2. Funniest
Oh,
fucking
yeah?
TV
Okay.
show I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
That's an exaggeration, but I laughed. I watched all of season 2 while I was on the East Coast in one night, and my stomach and face hurt from laughing the next day.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
No
I'm gonna
shit.
check that out then.
It is pretty
Okay.
weird. It's out there. It might not be for you. So if you get one episode in and you think this is strange, then it's not for you. But
Just one episode? Shouldn't you give it like more?
no. If it,
Okay.
one, like give it one episode. The first episode
Is it cringy?
I don't know. It
Like
makes
Office-like?
me laugh. It's really weird. It's hard to describe what kind of humor it is.
Okay.
It's like it's intense. It's
Huh.
random intense skits.
Huh.
It's
Okay.
hilarious. Yeah. If you like it, you'll like it a lot. If you don't like it, you might think I'm a weirdo. So that's
Well, we already
Well,
think you're a weird.
yeah.
Again,
So-
yes, as TC said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
but I'm not the
Well,
only
echo
one.
that.
The second season especially is getting like ridiculously good reviews all over the
Oh,
internet.
okay.
So
All right.
that's my recommendation. Did you have one, John?
I was just Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
We just enjoyed it. We enjoyed Loki too, except for the last episode. It was sort of fizzled a bit, it seemed, but I liked it up till then.
TC, you got anything?
I've been watching SEAL Team. So
What's SEAL Team? What is that?
It's a great show on CBS.
Is it a drama or is it like a documentary?
Yeah, it's a drama about
It's a drama.
Navy SEAL team.
SEAL team.
John, do you know what that is? Is that why
with
you
the
laughed?
dude from?
I just laughed because it sounds like it's a very like action.
It's called
show.
Cop Show. It's about
is.
cops.
It's good.
It's really
It's
good.
a cop show kind
good.
of, yeah.
It's good. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's good. They're great. You know, they do some good shit. It's
They go
it's good.
underwater. They swim around. They save
It's the
people.
guy from fucking what's it called? Remember Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Who's the vampire? Remember the vampire?
I never watched that show.
There are lots of
Oh, my
different
God, from
vampires.
back in
The
the
guy
day.
Was
who's
that all
Angel?
vampires?
Yeah, no, it was just one dude that was the vampire
I don't even remember.
that she fell in love with. I can't remember.
Oh, I
Angel
remember.
Angel
Yeah,
was his
was it
name.
Angel?
And then
Yeah.
there was the spin-off show, Angel. That main
Yeah.
character is like main character of SEAL Team, and he's
And
great.
then I think he was the
great.
guy in Bones too. I think.
Was he in? Yeah, he was in Bones. I think he was.
Yeah.
Dude, he's great. He's great as
This
a
guy's
SEAL.
had such a good career from 1999 to 2004, Angel. From 2005 to 2017, Bones. And as soon as
Yep.
that ended, he's on SEAL Team. This
SEAL
guy's
Team.
had a fucking
Dude,
career.
and SEAL Team's great. SEAL Team is great.
Really?
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, I don't see you as like I would see the name SEAL Team. I think it's going to be this sort of bro fest.
It is, but it isn't. It's very family oriented, right? Because they all have families and they get called overseas to go fight at like any time, right? so there's all that drama, right? Exactly.
When's Daddy coming
It's
home?
good.
Mommy?
It's good.
Daddy's
It's good. Then they
defending the
die,
country.
and there's no more daddy anymore, that kind of thing.
Yay.
It's good stuff.
Good family fun.
Yeah, it's good drama. It's good. It's
They
good
have the
intensity.
you already have a
Everything's
scene
good.
where the soldier gives the crying little girl the flag.
Oh
in
yeah,
a
that's a
triangle.
thing. That happens at
Yeah,
least once,
yeah.
twice. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got good pacing. You can fly through those episodes. Cookie cutter as fuck. It's the same shit over
Cool.
and over again. I love it. Great.
All right.
Great.
We've got a full spectrum there.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's right.
All right.
So
Sweet.
Grave of the Fireflies, maybe Green Knight. I'll let to see what happens.
We'll get a little surprise action.
Yeah. And TC, plan
Yeah.
your day. This one's a sad one. Just to, don't
Oh,
do it.
Grave of
Don't
the
do it before
Fireflies.
you're about to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
do something fun or something like that.
Right. End of day. Okay, copy.
End of day.
This one's
Yeah.
notorious, I think, for its sadness. I have not seen it, but I have stayed away from it actually because
On purpose.
Haha.
I've heard of that.
Now you have to watch it.
Yeah,
All
no choice.
right. Womp,
I
womp.
think you can get these on HBO Max. Most of the Ghibli ones, so I better be on there.
Yep. That's true.
All right.
Sweet. All right. Talk
See
to
you
you guys
guys
next
later.
week.
We'll see you later.
Stop 'em.